What's up, everybody? Jim here with Chris, Carl, and a very special guest on this week's Keeping It Real podcast, the birthday boy himself, Eric Goldman.
Thank you. It's been a while since I've been on Keeping It Real, but it's good to be back.
You are my IGN TV counterpart to my movies, but there's overlaps.
There is. There's even shared universes.
There is. There's an IGN shared universe.
There's an IGN shared universe.
This is pretty much like when Ant-Man met.
We have a bold 10 movie slate we're gonna announce.
All the way up through 2016. That's what we're doing. So, all right. So we, excuse me, we actually want to start this week by talking about something called Star Wars.
What is that?
It's actually your great passion, that and Harry Potter.
Yes.
Now, The Force Awakens, we have a bunch of toys, new toys that have been unveiled now over the. It's going to be going on for.
It's
done now.
The reveals on the
done.
Even though they said that all the reveals weren't done on that stream. There'll still be stuff in stores on Friday that wasn't part of that.
Yeah. So we have a bunch of stuff up on the site now. Some of the new toys. The coolest one looks to be the remote control BB-8.
He's so little.
Yeah,
so
but it shows you he can do all that stuff.
We have a really cool video of that on the site or on Facebook actually, if you want to watch it there. We got to go see Sphero in person. We haven't seen it yet in person.
Yes.
But, up in San Francisco, they went to see at the Sphero.
Yeah.
Went to see him and said he's adorable.
And this has been a global event. I mean, our counterparts in London have done stuff, and then was in Australia.
Yeah.
So, but outside of BB-8, was there any new toys that really grabbed you, or anything new that we learned, really?
I mean, there was a couple of little character reveals. I mean, it's always funny, these little ways things reveal, but the Lego Millennium Falcon had a couple of new little characters. One of them was, one had a name, but the other was just identified as...
Was it like Tasu Leech or something?
I want to call him Tabbouleh Goulash.
But the other was like
something
something gangster or something, so he wasn't even like a named character yet, because we know Star Wars, every single guy will be named. So I have a feeling these are going to be, maybe they are, we know that there's this, the mocap pirate character, that Lupita's playing. So maybe these are guys who work for her, I'm guessing.
Yeah, there's been some rumors that it's the two dudes from the Raid who are in the movie, that they could be the gang members, which would be, hopefully though, if you're going to cast the guys from the Raid, they better fight.
Yeah,
they will fight.
Come on.
They will fight. They will fight. They're definitely not just going to sit there.
Yeah.
And then, we also, though, got a good look at the other part of Kylo Ren's helmet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now
he does have a back of a helmet.
He does. It's not just all cloak. Take off the cloak, and the back of it does look like Darth Vader's helmet.
Yeah.
And I proposed a theory, I want to say just a week or two ago on Keeping It Real, that since Kylo Ren is such a Darth Vader fanboy, that we see the burned out Vader helmet in the first trailer, that he actually took the helmet and kind of rejiggered it into his own mask.
I think they probably added the front piece. And
because
the back
that was the
piece
part that was all damaged.
Also, the back of that helmet looks really damaged.
Yeah,
there's dings in it. And it's kind of.
I see the opening sequence of Nightmare on Elm Street where Freddy's hands are making the glove, but it's like Kylo Ren hammering that.
He's gonna forge.
It's really funny. All these relics basically that are being sought. That's what we think is sort of happening.
They have no eBay in that part of the galaxy.
It's so funny, it's similar to how we all sort of search for these little elements.
I do think it's a really interesting commentary on fandom. As much as it's clearly there's the neo-Nazi kind of side to it that we've talked about, but this is like the extreme fanboy. Basically.
He's a cosplayer.
Yeah, exactly.
The back of that helmet actually invokes the Nazi helmet as well.
Oh, yeah.
And,
which also the Empire did.
So did all the helmetry.
Yeah,
helmetry. All the helmetry in Star Wars has always invoked Nazism. But it's clear that they are going for this imperialistic tone.
Yeah.
They're going for this they're still bad.
You've given me a segue, Mr. Carl, to a reader email from Steve Gale. I'm just going to read the whole thing. On a previous episode, previously on Keeping It Real, You guys wondered what kind of creed the Empire had and how its legacy could appeal to a later generation. So I got to ask you, do you think the Republic depicted in the prequels was really worth writing home about? They were entrenched in a war with multiple disenfranchised factions, including separatists and a liberation army. To be at war with separatists is to try and force others to participate in your government against their choosing, which is rather antithetical to the concept of a republic. To be at war with a liberation army means that there are those in your government that feel oppressed. And let's face it, the droids in the Star Wars universe have a legitimate grievance in that respect. They demonstrate personalities and seem as sentient as any organic race, but they are still treated as property. And that mistreatment even includes the good guys. Maybe to some war-weary galactic denizens, the iron-fisted rule of the Empire was appealing. We have our historical figures who were revered for achieving unity amongst their people by crushing all opposition, like Alexander in Greece and Tokugawa in Japan.
Steve,
Hold on, he's not done yet. Now, we don't know what came to fill the void left by the Empire, but maybe it ain't decades of dancing around campfires singing Yub Nub. Some might look back fondly in the days when the trains ran on time.
No, this is
Damn, Steve Gale.
This is something actually that's been talked about a lot in the last couple of years. Dave Filoni, the showrunner of Rebels, who worked on Clone Wars, talked a lot about when Rebels was beginning. That idea, the idea of the people who were like, "Oh, I kind of like this Empire thing." Like,
yeah,
that's it.
Would have been like the Tories in Revolutionary
Yeah, it's
America.
like that things seem very orderly, first order. But yeah, that for certain people, especially people that were in like in the inner system close to Coruscant and whatnot, and were treated better, that it was about like, oh, well, the war is over, the Clone Wars is over, and there's stability.
That one battle.
And supplies, like we're getting, this actually, I think Star Wars Aftermath, the book that's coming out this week, kind of addresses this, but the idea of that, like, under the Empire, at least you could kind of count on things to arrive at the right time. And like
bureaucratic efficiency. That is what they're fighting for.
But
that's
a lot
their
of people
creed.
want that. It's purely stability. It's purely like, hey, I want this thing that I can expect, and I'm just going to live out my life. Because for a lot of people, they don't care who's in charge necessarily. It's just like, I want to go have my experiences in my life, and as long as I don't feel too oppressed, I'm cool with it. Like, it happens all the time. You see it in all regimes of this country. Somebody feels oppressed. It doesn't matter what your politics.
Regimes of this country?
Yeah.
So, you make it sound like we're multiple fiefdoms.
No, I'm just saying in all of the serial regimes, each new party who comes into power, people feel like there's some people who are disenfranchised, and there's some people who feel really great about it,
Yeah.
And so there's definitely going to be some people who are like, yeah, I love the Empire. Do they call it the Empire?
They did, because he declared it in Revenge of the Sith. He declared it an empire.
So, I mean, it's hard to love it when you're like, I'm part of an empire. But maybe if you're like really, really nationalistic or...
Yeah. But it's also, I mean, it harkens back to Romans,
Yeah.
It started as a republic and became an empire, and their ideals kind of petered out a little bit, and, they probably look at the rebels a bit like Romans did barbarians, I mean, but I am curious, like, and you've read a lot of the novels, was there ever sort of, even in the EU that has been ditched, was there ever any sort of creed to the Empire? They were just bad guys in cool suits.
No, I mean, so first EU, it's been a while since I read a lot of that, because I kind of drifted off with a lot of the stuff. I read a lot of it early and then stopped reading it. But even in the recent canon novels, we're actually getting to know more, there's been some prominent Imperial characters, some of them more sympathetic than others, that are sort of there are characters are in the Admiral Piet way of this is just a person doing their job, that is trying to get into their point of view more, and the fact that they truly do see the rebels as this insurgent, force that is trying to stop what is a system that works, So we're definitely seeing that side of it in some of these stories.
I just feel like the Empire kind of has a PR problem though, because they're so heavily tied to the dark side of the Force.
I want to see a fanfic about the Empire's PR flack,
But it's called the dark side.
Focus group.
It's called the dark side of the Force, and you've got this dude whose face is essentially falling off his skull, who's your leader, and he shoots lightning out of his fingers.
But Lords of the Sith made it clear that Palpatine did not it was not public knowledge that he was a Sith or had any Force abilities. Like,
but he still looks like
Vader, like, it was
evil
pretty.
bastard.
Vader obviously used the lightsaber publicly, and there was like something with him. But yes, besides, you're just judging him on how he looks, Chris. But
it's true, but he looks really evil.
Yeah, but they talk about how they never wanted people to know, even though of course his inner circle knew, but that they didn't want most people to know that he had Force abilities. That was kept under wraps.
But
you're like, that
everyone
dude's
knows I'm
ugly.
evil, but don't let him know I have magic.
Right.
We all know what he looked like when he started out, and his face wasn't like completely ashen. He didn't have red eyes, and he didn't hold his hands like this.
But he blamed it on the Jedi when he made the same speech where he declared it an empire. He's like, oh, look what they did to me.
I am a child in this fight.
You don't remember his Senate speech? Come on.
He only remembers the tax policy. Well, we want to know what you guys think about. I don't know, Star Wars. what you
Was
think?
the Empire right?
Yeah,
Are you pro-Empire?
what do you think the Empire was actually fighting for? Was it just order? Was it all really, at the end of the day, just about bureaucratic efficiency? Let us know in the comments, and let us know what your favorite toys were that have been unveiled so far. Let's talk about Star Wars Episode 8, because there's some casting reports out there.
Episode 8, guys. We're talking about it.
Episode 8. And a female lead. Now, this has got a lot of tongues wagging, like, what does this mean for Rey, Daisy Ridley's character? Doesn't mean that she's not in it, but it does say female lead, and that she's going, this character, unspecified character, would be testing opposite John Boyega. So clearly, Finn and this character will have some sort of adventure together. But
Or be opposed to each other.
Yeah.
Or be opposed to each other.
Yeah.
Or be.
Yeah, I mean, she very well could be.
For those listening, I was
fists?
gesturing that it was perhaps coitus. But the three actresses that are reportedly up for the role are Tatiana Maslany from Orphan Black, Gina Rodriguez from Jane the Virgin, and Olivia Cooke from Bates Motel, but you also have seen her in movies such as Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, and of course, that American classic, Ouija.
Yes. Let's stick with Bates Motel.
Well,
which is getting a sequel, right?
Well, yeah. when I was getting some of their nominations and stuff to kind of put into the story, it was like Golden Globe nominee and Emmy nominee Tatiana Maslany, Golden Globe winner Emmy winner? No, Golden Globe winner Gina Rodriguez, and Fangoria Chainsaw Award third place recipient Olivia Cooke. And I was like, she'll get there. She'll get there.
I think
she's a great
she
actor.
will get there. I mean, it was the same week she was also one of the finalists for Ready Player One.
And
so.
I think that's the Steven Spielberg directed adaptation of the book, video game story. She's up for a role with Elle Fanning and Lola Kirk. But I think Olivia Cooke will get the Spielberg movie because those big eyes of her. Isn't that like perfect for the Spielberg kind of reaction shot? She's got the big, I can just see the trailer now, you know?
She walks into the office, he's like, hired. All right.
Let me see your eyes. Perfect. Next.
I mean, these are all three really, great actresses, and Maslany, first of all, she leaps out because, she's so praised for Orphan Black, rightfully so, but also because she was one of the finalists for Rogue One, for the Felicity Jones role. So clearly Lucasfilm is like, we are getting her in a Star Wars movie, to which I say, hell yeah, please.
She is also the fan favorite. I mean, you know, a lot of, it really is like the most positive chatter I've seen is between her and Rodriguez.
Yeah, I mean, Rodriguez is in a show that is like not really our readership, but she's terrific. And critics love her too. In fact, someone even tweeted to me, when I tweeted out that they were the three finalists, someone's like, Maslany and Rodriguez is basically like getting all the TV critics to say, yeah, because they're both so beloved. Again, not that Cooke isn't, but Cooke doesn't play a showy role. She's a supporting role on her show.
Yeah.
She's more like someone people are like, oh, she's, one movie away from everyone kind of noticing her.
Yeah.
But I do wonder now that it's Maslany twice in a row, they've like gone to her. So it feels like if it isn't this one, it's inevitable she will be cast.
Or that,
it
or
could
she'll
be-
be so, twice bitten, once bitten, twice shy. I don't know.
Yeah, Sam Heughan was saying from Outlander was saying that he tested something like 7 times for Game of Thrones and they never cast him.
Oh, for different roles?
For different roles.
I just wanted to see him naked.
right.
And so that happens too.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
And it could just be that somebody doesn't audition well or doesn't click with that person, that they're opposite. We'll see. But yeah, I think they're all fine choices. I personally think Tatiana as well, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't actually know Gina's work at all, so
I've seen a couple episodes of that show. She's very charming, very likable on that show.
So do we think then this is a heroine or a villainess?
It's hard. I mean, we're in a weird place with Star Wars, right? Because suddenly we went from no Star Wars movies to all Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're making them so quick means, Episode 7 isn't even open, and we're talking about Episode 8 casting.
Yeah, because it's going to go into production early next year for 2017 release.
But I do believe all the leads for the Force Awakens are signed for multiple.
Right.
So I mean, whether that's that could be a smoke screen.
Or a safety net.
But I really
we
do
know
think
Oscar
Daisy
Isaac
will be
has
back.
said that
Yeah.
he's back.
Yeah, I wouldn't assume anything because a lot of people were tweeting me like, what does this mean? Does this mean Rey dies in Episode 7? I just don't assume anything. I mean, I said, look, who, if we had the internet now and it was like Billy D. Williams is being cast for a major role with chemistry read with Carrie Fisher for, Episode 5, people would be like, Han dies, not that they would care because they wouldn't know who he is because it was the first movie. But, you know what I mean? And so, I just feel like we were saying, like, who knows, me and Jim were talking about this, like, maybe Rey goes off on her own journey in Episode 8.
Well, it could be like if they're going to follow any of the sort of the arcs of the past movies, if and we've talked before about Kylo Ren being like the anti-Luke Skywalker, the guy who maybe comes from nowhere and ends up, instead of the hero of the galaxy, the villain of the galaxy, she could be like Luke going off to Dagobah in the next one. You know? We don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities, but I feel like I can't help but root for Maslany because I just love her so much on that show, and I'd love to see her in a Star Wars movie.
Yeah. If it was Joss Whedon, I'd be like, she's dead.
Right. True.
Let's see. Now, speaking of Ready Player One and Spielberg, he has been doing some press because he's got his Cold War movie Bridge of Spies coming up this fall. And one comment of his has gotten a lot of play, including here on IGN. And he basically said that he thinks superhero movies are going to go the way of the Western, that they will eventually just die out. It doesn't mean they won't ever make them again, but their popularity will wane, and it's just basically this genre or subgenre, as some want to say, is a phase. What do you say to that?
I mean, look, it's going to reach its peak, right? Like, we're going into this year comparatively is a light year, where there are like 4 movies, whereas like next year is crazy, and then there's even crazier years coming. So there'll be a peak. There will be a couple of big bombs. It's just kind of inevitable. We've got so much plotted out. I don't know if it'll be as extreme as the Western, as far as, how it was everything and then it was nothing. But I think, maybe, by the beginning of the next decade, maybe they'll scale way back. And it'll just be like, we'll only go back to 1 or 2 of these a year.
Yeah.
We have major forces driving superhero movies. Disney is one of them. And what you see is it's the marketing machine, the toy selling machine. You're selling toys to kids that are just coming up now. So of course they're going to want to see stories about these heroes that they've been tracking their whole life. And that's what these people are paid to do, is like get them to consume that entertainment for years to come. And so I think, and they've
Hence,
proven
grown-ass
successful.
men sitting around talking about Star Wars.
But they've proven really successful with several models. Their animated model, the princess model, like cars, things like that. Like, they're inundated, and so like you are always going to have these kids with an appetite for it. That said, I think Disney's going to be pretty secure. They may scale back to like 1 movie a year on the Marvel side. Yeah. But I think they're going to exist.
I think it's also too. I mean, as soon as these movies stop making money overseas, or they're no longer moving merch, that's when I don't think it's, and I'm rooting for the DC movie slate to work, but I do think it's far more likely some of those are going to bomb than Marvel. And actually, one thing before we talk a little bit more about Marvel and some behind the scenes shakeups going on over there, I just want to add the big difference between the superhero genre and the Western genre is that the Western genre was kind of killed by the times, by Vietnam, frankly, because America stopped believing in its own mythology. I'm not the only one who's kind of said this, but it's the Western. There were a lot of factors for why people stopped seeing Westerns, and a lot of it had to do with it was very symbolic of America. And once America wanted to stop celebrating its own history, its own past, or they didn't like the reality of that period being held up rather than the myth, they stopped consuming it. Superhero movies don't have that problem because we've never actually had an Iron Man or a Captain America.
Right.
Damn it.
I know. I'm still waiting. Like there's some meme online like, how many billionaires and no one's tried to be Batman? You bunch of slackers.
Right.
Like, so I feel like superhero movies are much safer. It'll die out because people are just like bored with it, but it won't be a cultural rejection the way the Western was.
Yeah, and maybe it will have to just keep evolving. I mean, we're already talking about, Guardians was already one of like, let's take it in a different direction, and now we're waiting to see what Doctor Strange will be like. But maybe it'll just be like, maybe we'll see less, we won't get 5 traditional superhero movies in one year, but they'll kind of go into weirder places with it.
Right, right. And we've seen now with the Netflix stuff too, like they're bringing it street level.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that all those comments are totally spot on. With the Western, it's you still see Westerns now. It's just not as many.
Yeah, Tarantino's now making Westerns.
Him and Costner are like single-handedly keeping that genre alive. But also the small screen has helped a lot. I think the problem with Westerns is when one of them bombs, and most of them frankly do, they stop making them. When a rom-com bombs, they don't stop making rom-coms. So the Western has always had a hurdle to jump that other genres that do have their failures, including horror, animation,
Well, I would say with rom-coms even, that's been cyclical. There are less and less of them even now, but like they still get made. So like it's kind of
and
like
VOD has been kind to them. I mean, you get a lot of the indie, sort of the mumblecore kind of rom-com stuff.
The thing about Westerns that limits it, and not to say, there are amazing Westerns. I'm just saying that on a like audience perception, but also a studio perception, when they can be way over the top with that bomb, don't do that again, is because Westerns are most of the time going to visually, on a bare, of course people can do, shoot them differently, but the aesthetic's going to be a Western, that period, that setting, where again, a comic book movie or even a rom-com isn't limited by that. Different settings, comic book movies can be different time periods,
and also there's
different galaxies.
And I found this out from, not to name drop, but like, we all have like actor friends, and one of my actor friends was on Deadwood, and he said one of the big reasons why HBO didn't support that show over an Entourage or a Sex and the City, even though Deadwood was better, was there's no product placement opportunity. You can't sell anything. You can't make a deal to have part of your budget covered by like a Samsung phone or something like that. Whereas any contemporary thing of any genre, you can work something in. You know?
And that's significant. You can see it at play in things like Transformers. Like that is cutting a big chunk of budget. And like movies like that get made for the budgets that they get made because there's an infusion of money from product placement, and also like that movie had a lot of money from China as well.
Yeah. So that's more talk about the Western I think we've ever had. And I love Westerns. I wish, I feel like a man born out of his time. I wish I had been, working in Hollywood back when they made Westerns and gangster movies all the time. And
you're stuck with all the superhero crap.
Stupid Batman, who I love. So, speaking of superhero crap, there was some behind-the-scenes stuff going on at Marvel this week. Kevin Feige, the president of Marvel Studios and the producer in all the Marvel movies, no longer has to report to Ike Perlmutter, who is the boss of Marvel, and who has controlled it basically since his company, saved their ass in the 90s when they were bankrupt. And he is a notorious penny pincher and apparently just a nasty piece of work.
I mean, again, and no one will go on the record. Obviously, Feige and anyone who's working at Marvel.
What we're saying is he's the emperor.
No one working at Marvel has ever done an interview going, "Oh yeah, like he's horrible to work for." But there, if you listen around town and to a lot of people, there's a lot of anecdotes about him not being the greatest and being a source of a lot of issues and things that hold up and complaints, specific complaints even fans have sometimes, down to like merchandising stuff. Often is said to be, third-hand rumor, but you hear enough of it, you start to think,
or like, why won't you spend money on this or that?
Yeah.
And it's like, and it started, like a lot of these stories started with Iron Man 2 and Mickey Rourke's salary. And Robert Downey basically had to make a public stink about like, will you just pay, I want to work with Mickey Rourke, will you just pay him? And I think ultimately he only got paid like $250,000 for that movie. And that's what they were penny pinching over, which on a Marvel, even on the second Iron Man when it still had a low budget, like that was still a drop in the bucket.
Well, Chris Evans was making something like $200,000 for the first Captain America.
And then like $500,000, and then now he's
crazy.
Yeah, for the size of that movie, it's like, that's just
and the importance
doesn't happen
of his character. It's,
right.
I mean, I think they were totally just scared by what Downey pulled down. Like they made him this sweet deal because they probably didn't think.
Like, well, this won't last that long.
And now Downey basically has the gross national product of most countries.
But you know what? So does Marvel. Like, spread it around. You're fine. You know, like it's cool.
But this shakeup means because now Feige's going to answer to Alan Horn, the head of Disney. Basically means Kevin Feige no longer has to deal with some guy that he reportedly couldn't get along with and who the buck stopped with. Now he's going to be working with a guy that by most accounts he gets along with fine.
And he's very happy with what Marvel has done for them.
Yes, which is print billions of dollars.
Yeah. It's interesting too because like when you get a scenario like this, you're no longer operating under these constraints that made the movies what they are at this point. So it can go two ways, right? It can go like in the way of like, oh, now we're going to spend way more money than we should, and everything's going to get more lavish. Or you can still operate in that frame and then maybe make smart bets here and there, which I'm hoping is what they do.
Yeah. Do you think they run the risk now of they're already getting bloated in terms of the sheer number of characters?
Sure.
Like, is there something? Sometimes somebody saying no, you can't have that. You come up with a more creative solution. I mean,
just in general, the characters that they own have made it interesting because
they couldn't start with Spider-Man and the X-Men.
Exactly.
It's always a double-edged sword. There's never a perfect answer on these things. About I was just talking to a friend of mine who's a TV writer, and about that whole thing of, as fans and as people who cover the industry, you always have that push and pull of like hearing that a creator you love is being really like stymied and having like the studio or network restrict them and be like, just let them do what they creatively want. And then the flip side of pure no restriction freedom, and sometimes we see these projects that are like, ooh, that he needed someone to tell him, don't do that.
My God, man.
Right, and it's really hard to say what's the alchemy, what is the exact right amount.
I've heard that about David Lynch. Like David Lynch operates the way that he does because he's got people to kind of like keep him in order. And I mean, it could be said of a lot of directors, a lot of creative folks in general. Like if you have that person.
Lucas didn't have that around.
Lucas is the one I go to all the time with this because it's when we hear because Lucas is like he got 100% creative freedom. He got to do everything he wanted, and then people were like, I don't like what you did. And then people specifically were like, he should have had a studio. He should have had Gary Kurtz and all these things. And it's like, and I'm like, but I hear you at the same time say about other projects, let him do what he wants. You don't never know. Like sometimes it is that weird bounce of different personalities to make things right.
And this is maybe not a left field, but I was thinking about this on my drive this morning. Jim inspired me to listen to the Bee Gees.
Oh.
He sent me some Bee Gees link the other day, and on my drive today, I was like, I'm going to listen to the Bee Gees. And then it occurred to me while I was listening that, and I don't know why I was thinking about this particular thing, but the Bee Gees may never have existed, right? Like, those guys might not have met if they decided not to. I don't know how
they were brothers.
Well, the two guys were, but the whole group, right?
No, they were all brothers. The Gibbs. The Bee Gees?
They're mostly Gibbs.
Okay, that's a bad Damn it. Anyway, okay.
Pick any other band.
I just really wanted to say Bee Gees. Okay. Led Zeppelin, one of your favorites.
Okay.
Okay, so if like the guy hadn't seen the flyer, or if the guy didn't know the guy in college, or if they didn't hear music in the same way, or any number of things didn't happen the way that they happened, you would be missing this entire chunk of our music history. Same could be said of film, anything creative. Like, since these are collaborative mediums, like if just one element changes, sometimes it throws off the alchemy of the thing.
Right.
And that's what we get worried about, I think. And that's why people are like, oh, I wish it was this way, or I wish it was that way.
Yeah.
Well, here's one more thing that reportedly has changed behind the scenes at Marvel, and comes via Heroic Hollywood, and then Birth Movies Death did a follow-up on it. Basically, Marvel Studios has also ditched a creative committee, which apparently, you know, everyone had to sign off on the scripts and stuff like that. And, you know, it's a bureaucratic process, but, you know, checks and balances, yada, yada, yada. But apparently that is no longer going to be the case, and now it'll just be basically a core group or a handful of executives, meaning Feige and whoever the hell he wants to talk to.
And again, you know, so the Marvel movies are so unusual. Other people were following the template, but, you know, because they're essentially run like a giant TV show, right?
Yeah.
And Kevin Feige
Really expensive one.
with Kevin Feige sort of fulfilling the showrunner role, you know, and. You know, again, it's like something like Edgar Wright's probably a great example of this. You know, him leaving Ant-Man, which made a lot of people really sad and then also pissed, being like, well, what was it? Were they just not letting him do his thing? What a-holes, you know, that they're not like, and again, I don't know the full story. Maybe they were a-holes, but at the same time, it's like, no, well, you have restrictions no matter what if you're doing a studio movie, but especially with these Marvel ones, it's what we want. We want this intricate, connected universe, but guess what? That does not give you the full creative freedom you would have on a standalone movie. It just doesn't. And, you know, it will still be Feige and a couple of guys overseeing, but it sounds like it'll be less. There were several other people, and maybe a few less cooks in the kitchen, and maybe it can help.
Well, this is to Birth Movies Death follow-up said that, quote, the notes that drove Edgar Wright off Ant-Man came from the creative committee. What's more, the creative committee was often very tardy with their notes, making movie development a much slower process. I mean, some of the people were like Quesada and guy. I mean, these are busy people.
Really
they have
busy guys.
other jobs and part of that corporate family. But all of the committee members have, well, here he goes. All the other committee members have other very important jobs, so you understand why that would be the case. But it's a pain for filmmakers. And then these just basically sort of the natural political divisions that happen within any company and the territoriality or territorialism of this stuff. So.
It sounds like they're more relying. You know, Feige's been there for years. You know, he's obviously created something very not on his own, but he's helped spearhead something so successful. It sounds like they're like, okay, we feel we can trust in you because Disney's the ones who's having this happen. Disney's
$3 billion later, we trust
maybe
you.
we could take away some of these other people and put it, let you make more decisions with a couple of he's never going to just be able to make every decision on his own, but take away some of the other people to make it a bit more streamlined.
What if Peter Pan were Iron Man?
Wait, I want everything gold-plated.
That would be coming down from above.
Now, let's see, just throwing out a little Marvel news that Thor Ragnarok and Captain Marvel will reportedly might film in Australia because it said that Disney had such a wonderful experience shooting down there for Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Men Tell No Tales, which I don't believe because when your major star almost has his dogs killed by the Australian government, I somehow think that may have pissed on that experience a wee bit.
No, it's obviously there must be a good financial incentive. Why are they filming in Atlanta right now?
Yeah, exactly. Did we talk about Hulk in Civil War yet? No, we did not. A Marvel rumor. Did we talk about Hulk not being in Civil War? Mark, we did before we rolled. That's why all of us are scratching our heads like monkeys.
We did talk about it.
Mark Ruffalo has said in an interview that Hulk was initially in Captain America Civil War drafts of the script. He is no longer, and Marvel is saving him, but for what he doesn't know. He has no idea when Hulk will come back.
Hulk is in space.
And don't forget, we heard that at one point they also almost had the Wasp in Civil War. That was the movie where she was going to become the Wasp. But at a certain point, they're like, they said they cut her specifically, and this was more on the studio side commenting that it was like too many characters. let's scale back. So I mean, there's several reasons to cut the Hulk. Both the too many characters thing. There's the power balance thing of just like, it's convenient in a right way to not have Hulk or Thor in this movie, just because it's like whoever has them, it's like that's pretty helpful. I mean, they wrote Hulk out Civil War the comic. They sent him to space during that time, and I think they even said it just felt like whoever has Hulk that would
Superman fighting Batman.
Throw off the balance too much, and that's why they sent him away for a storyline that would not be able to keep him. Now this will be more murky because the end of we're not going to get any other Marvel movie between now and Civil War, but the Age of Ultron ending sent him away. So just he's off the grid.
Yeah.
And I think it's the right call for this.
I don't think he's in space.
I still maintain he's going to be in space, either in Part 1 or Part 2 of Infinity War. I think we'll
post-credit Guardians too.
Well, Renner said that he doesn't think the Guardians are going to show up for Infinity War.
But I feel like I think that was just he was doing a panel at a convention and kind of speculating. I do think Infinity War, especially the fact that Thanos' biggest role so far was in Guardians.
Yeah.
It's like
where he actually got off his chair.
Yeah, he stood up. I'm just saying, like, I feel like they have to. I think Infinity War Part 2 is the cosmic. We all have to band together.
Do they bring all the Guardians, or could we just see Rocket and Groot show up?
Nah, it's all.
They're
gonna calling it. 2015.
Thanos is kind of is like a dad after Thanksgiving dinner. I'll get up and shovel this sidewalk.
The freaking raccoon is here.
Get him out of the garbage. I want to talk about some of Steven Spielberg's other stuff that was in this story. That DreamWorks has a distribution deal with Disney. It's probably going to end and might go back to Universal, where he started his career.
Because they need more money.
Yes, because they're struggling so much. What with that 50 Shades of Grey and Jurassic World, but he's
and everything.
had some of his biggest directing and producer hits with Universal. And there was one line in, I believe, THR's report that I felt like a lot of people jumped on and saying and basically what they said was Spielberg would be key for Universal to potentially reboot Jaws or Back to the Future, which of course makes everyone go apeshit.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. But I don't think it's. Goldman, I'm going to let you explain why the Back to the Future reboot thing is probably never going to happen.
Well, Zemeckis literally a month ago was just quoted, unless he was lying or incorrect, saying that contractually he and Bob Gale have any say over a remake or reboot of Back to the Future, that it was in their contract back in '85, and as long as he's alive, they cannot, and Gale, they can't do anything without them saying yes, and he's even trying to work it out with his estate to basically stop them from doing anything with that. So
could they ever just do a sequel, just use the brand of Back to the Future, but have new characters?
It sounded like no. Again, it's an unusual deal for any big studio movie, but it sounded like no. So that's why Back to the Future especially we're very dubious on. Jaws is, I was reading some other article that was pointing out, look, Jaws isn't precious anymore as one of the best movies ever, but there were 3 terrible sequels already. So it's like getting worse sequels. So it's not, they've already tarnished the brand. There's more recent spin-off, even though Back to the Future's had recent merch too, Jaws has sort of already done a weird spin-off video game that had none of the characters from the movie. There's more of already a precedent set there. And that's the one where I think something could happen. But it does sound like they know better. Universal would not want to do it without Spielberg sort of signing off on it.
And Spielberg has even said he has an idea for a scene from Jaws that he never did, but he was he said he often thinks of that scene and be like, is that enough just for a whole movie, for a premise for a movie? And I could see him kind of a la Jurassic World signing off on another Jaws, but Jaws is an absolutely awesome movie. It's one of my faves. But I don't think in this day and age of a Jurassic World where everything has to be bigger, and frankly, day and age of Sharknado, I don't think you could actually just do, there's a shark out there and he's going to eat you movie. I mean, it's
What if it was Jaws?
yeah,
Oh, that's
multiple
the
Jaws.
name. With a lot of Z's. Jaws.
But basically, then you're doing either deep blue sea, right?
Yes.
Or
sharks.
open water, or any of these other like Dura sharks out there. They're gonna. I don't know how do you even do another Jaws movie in this day and age where everything has to be big, or is he, is sharks from space? I don't know. What the
Well,
hell
it's kind of like Godzilla, right? Like Godzilla did that slow burn, and some people loved it. I loved it. Some people hated it a lot.
Yeah.
But that is, I think, how you would do that movie. Is you'd say there's this giant shark out there.
So
that's
just like the original
You
movie,
would do it like the
basically,
original movie, but update it. Like Jaws is like my number 2 favorite movie of all time. And I'm not precious about it. Like if they want to remake Jaws or do something more with Jaws, I'm fine with it. If it's done well, it could be cool. I really liked Jurassic World.
Yeah.
If Colin Trevorrow wanted to do it, I'd be like,
I mean, that's the thing. Jurassic World is obviously a huge reason why you feel like Universal has to be going, hey, look.
What else you got?
This is huge, one of the biggest movies ever. And again, Jaws is a back feature as well, but we just think that there'd be more issues there. When you're Universal and everything's about brands and name value, and you've got something with such name value as Jaws and Back to the Future, you're like, yes, what else can we do with it? If the door is closed on Back to the Future, it just seems like Jaws is something where like they would want to do something. And if they could get Spielberg, the speculation and rumors is they wouldn't do it without him, but if they could get him like Jurassic World to be an executive producer.
But if an accident happened, they would. Now you're a
Whoa.
big theme park guy.
"That is a terrible place."
Universal.
Dark.
Hey, come on, we're kidding here.
If they
We're
could
all
have-
good
I'm
one.
sick and
If they could have Dom from Fast and Furious riding on a shark
That's the future
as the
of the
minions
franchise,
sworn.
Actually, I kind of like Dom riding on a shark. Let's write that movie.
It's about family.
We got to
a school
The
of
trailer
fish.
is going. We got to jump the shark. And then you see the car like leaping over. Fast and Furious meets Jaws. I mean,
Oh my
I'm
God.
saying Universal. You could do this.
Paychecks to Eric Goldman.
Do you think? Well, actually, you're a big theme park guy. They've done Jaws theme park
Oh
attractions.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
That's
they
another
actually,
reason to,
They actually
you know.
just closed the Jaws attraction in Orlando to make the Diagon Alley Wizarding World expansion. But Jaws is still a big part of the studio tour, which they just added Fast and Furious to here in LA. And yeah, it just feels like Universal would want to do something with that much name value. How do you approach it in this day and age? That is a
Yeah.
question, but it just feels like inevitable to some extent that something will happen with Jaws at some point.
They're going to take a page from their own playbook from Jurassic World. They're going to be weaponized sharks.
Yeah.
Humanoid shark killers.
Can they
Commandos.
have rockets
gonna
on their
need a
back,
bigger movie.
like in Batman Returns or the Penguins?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we want to know your guys' thoughts on the idea of even rebooting, doing a sequel to anything touching Jaws, and what the hell, throwing Back to the Future. But again, remember, probably not going to actually
I think
happen.
that's
Too many
less
legal,
Yeah.
too many legal deals there. But let us know in the comments what you think about all that and how they could do it. Let's, we were talking about Jurassic World. Let's talk about which is the biggest movie domestically and of the year, and the third biggest movie of all time globally. But not everyone liked it. Now that we are in September, what were your favorite movies of this past summer movie season? Chris Kyle, go.
Well, this is going to sound so stupid because you just introed it that way, but Jurassic World was my favorite movie
You're kidding.
of this summer. I would say of this year so far, Ex Machina is still my number 1 movie, but
Same here.
of this summer, I would say Jurassic World. It was a super fun ride, delivered on the things I wanted it to deliver on, and I think I got a little boy crush on Chris Pratt. I'm not going to lie. I'll just say that right here.
It didn't happen after last year's Guardians?
Well, no. I mean, that's where it germinated and
But now it's been
And
consummated.
now,
spread, and now I'm warm
now
with
his
love.
locker is just pictures.
I have so many Chris Pratt pictures in my
You got
locker.
you photoshopped like Chris Pratt's face in the Farrah Fawcett poster from.
What's funny is there's no magazine that would cater to that now.
No.
Like the Teen Beat would not have Chris Pratt in there. It would be
Isn't
like
Tiger Beat still around? Or?
Tiger
I
Beat.
think they are.
16 Wolverine or one of those things.
If I knew that, wouldn't you be scared?
Right. Any other summer movies that you like besides Jurassic World?
I liked Avengers as well. If you count that, I mean, it's in the summer.
Yeah.
Right.
I like that as
yes,
well.
summer starts. Even though it opened in April in the UK,
But
that
was the first summer movie.
I would say to me those were the two movies that stood out the most for me this summer.
Okay.
And I know they had like both the big ticket items, but I like them both.
It is the summer. That's when.
Rogue Nation, Mission Impossible is my favorite summer movie. It's the one I've actually seen the most.
Oh wow, more than Marvel movies.
I just really enjoyed it. I thought it was, although I think my second is Ant-Man, which again I would say I'm surprised it's more than Age of Ultron, which I liked. I didn't, I thought it had some issues, but I didn't, dislike it. But I did think Ant-Man was a more entertaining movie. A movie that sort of delivered, but both Rogue Nation and Ant-Man, were the movies I had the most fun with. If we're talking about what I look for in a summer movie, a classic summer movie, but Rogue Nation especially. I mean, the fact that it's the 5th movie in a series that's been around for 19 years, based on a TV show, and yet going so strong and just lots of great set pieces. I mean, I love that movie. The ad campaign was all around about the plane, which is the opening sequence, and then it's like, oh wait, we've got all this cool stuff we barely showed you.
Yeah,
there's the motorcycle.
Yeah, the motorcycle, the underwater part. I love those two. I don't want to dismiss Fury Road though. I loved it. It was probably a little overhyped to me, and again, that doesn't mean I hate it. I loved it. I think I went in a little, my expectations maybe were a little higher because I saw it after a lot of other people. Still was great though.
I'm gonna change my answer now.
Oh God.
Because I thought that was I had that in spring in my mind for some reason, even though Avengers, whatever. But I'd put that over Avengers.
Okay. I'm also picking Fury Road. I did like Jurassic World.
I did too, by the way.
But I would have to say that I think there was something about Ant-Man that I found particularly charming because it was a smaller scale movie. I don't think it's the best of the Marvel movies. I think it's right there kind of in the middle. But I also really liked Rogue Nation. But I'm thinking also, there was some comedies
what
too.
What about Spy in the mix?
Spy is great. I actually just saw Spy the other night again.
Inside Out. That's my other one.
Inside Out. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Fury Road and Inside Out.
Okay, now I'm changing my answer to
this is
Rogue Nation and Inside Out, because as much as I love Ant-Man, I would put Inside Out.
Let's do an easier thing now. Which movies this summer did you dislike the most? Mine is gonna be a weird answer because when I walked out of it, I was like, oh, it was okay. And then as soon as I immediately thought about it, it completely fell apart, and now I hate it, and that's Terminator Genesis.
Because remember you saw it after me, and you were like, I don't know, because I told you I didn't like it. To me, it's Fantastic Four. It's just easily as much. There was so much bad vibes going into that movie, and it delivered on them.
Expectations
it's such a dreary movie and such a slog. I think that's the worst thing about it. It's not even fun on a bad movie level, which is why I actually said after Fantastic Four, it kind of makes Terminator Genesis better in retrospect, only because Terminator Genesis moved. Not, it wasn't a good movie, but it moved. So for me, it's got to be Fantastic Four. I think it's a shame because that was a movie I was rooting for that movie to be a surprise after all the bad stories behind the scenes.
It would have been nice.
Because there are movies that happen. You hear all those bad things behind the scenes, and then you're like, oh, but the movie
the first X-Men was
right. Or even more recently, World War Z was another one, or the Apes movie.
Dawn of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
I mean, Rise.
But unfortunately, it wasn't to be. So Fantastic Four is my least favorite.
How about you, Carl?
I haven't seen Fantastic Four, and I probably won't for a long time.
right.
But
until you're strapped in Clockwork Orange.
I would say I like this more than most people, but it was still the worst movie I saw this summer was Pixels.
I didn't see that.
See, we didn't see that. So you took one for the team.
It really wasn't like it. I honestly think it's one. Every year you have one movie where everybody just jumps on it and just is like attacks it. Even if it's just like, okay, this is pretty mediocre. And I think it was that movie, but there were some funny elements. It was a little bit lazy in places, but it wasn't good. And so I think it's probably in competition with things like Fantastic Four.
I think it's worth mentioning in passing, though, by the way, that because of China, we might get a Terminator Genesis sequel.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's actually a very good point. I mean, there were already release dates announced, but let's face it, after it did really so.
Yeah, Amazing Spider-Man 3 and 4 had release dates.
Yes, exactly. So did Sinister Six, or so we thought we were going to get a Sinister Six. But it does, you're absolutely correct, the fact that it has been doing very well in China could be the only reason why that happens. So you can either thank or blame them, depending on your
I think I just read that it so far made 92 million in China, which is more than it made in the U.S. total, and it is bringing it over 400 million and just into that place because we've had some sequels in the past year.
Well, we're getting Pacific Rim 2.
Pacific Rim 2 and Snow White and the Huntsman are both movies that were like right on that precipice. Neither of them did as great in the U.S. as they hoped. And then overseas, they both made around 400 million.
Hansel and Gretel.
Yeah, that's another one.
But Terminator Genesis, it looks
that's
like...
why they keep cranking out the Resident Evil movies.
Specifically China, because I was just reading an article about how Terminator Genesis is now a bigger international hit than Mad Max, Fury Road. But Fury Road does not have a China release date. It may not even ever open there, because China is very specific about what they even allow to
There was also some interesting articles, and I think it was Forbes that had this about... why is Terminator Genesis considered a flop and Fury Road is considered a hit? And is it simply because the press liked Fury Road
it's
better?
Critical.
Because it's money-wise, it's not too far off from each other, But Fury Road, let's face it, I mean, that's the movie. It's still an underdog movie. You're still rooting for that one, and we don't know. We might not get that follow-up.
And it's worth considering the fact that at some level the studios are obviously going to pay attention to buzz. I mean, look back to when Batman Begins and Superman Returns, opening a year apart for Warner Brothers, both made about the same amount of money. Mm-hmm. Neither were as big as they wanted it to, but only one got a sequel. And I think that is because they're like, but people really liked Batman Begins. Way less people went to see it than we wanted. But they really liked it, whereas Superman Returns was way more polarizing. So, with Terminator Genesis, I mean, it's worth noting. There's no way Paramount hasn't heard the reaction. And I think that they would have to be like, okay, if we are doing a follow-up, we need to approach things differently.
It's going to just totally take place in China. They'll pull from their own Transformers playbook.
The big difference between those two movies, though, is that Mad Max was a much bigger hit domestically, but we are nearing that point where that matters less and less.
Yeah. Well, we want to know what you guys think. What were your favorite and least favorite movies of this summer? Let us know in the comments below. Now, as we near the end of a very special Keeping It Real, let's look ahead to fall, or as they say across the pond, autumn.
Or as they say across the other pond, summer.
Exactly. What fall movies are you most looking forward to? I'm going to kick it off by saying... we'll pick one or two movies each, however many you want. Why should I stand?
I've got 25.
Okay. Black Mass, which is shock.
I cannot believe
shock.
it. I can't
the
believe
internet just went, whoa. Grew up in Boston when Whitey Bulger was, again, I'm breaking news here, people.
From Boston?
Things about me I've never told anyone. Grew up when he was running the show there, and
much like the Empire, things
exactly. And he had a very different public perception at that time than he has now. It was much more of a Robin Hood, and then you find out, well, no, Robin Hood's really the devil. So I'm really fascinated with this movie. Everything I've seen from it so far looks great. It looks exactly like the way I'd always wished, if they were going to do a movie of it, that's how they would do it. One little news item I want to throw in there is that they've cut out Sienna Miller, who is in, American Sniper, the biggest movie of last year.
Yeah.
She played Whitey Bulger's second girlfriend in this movie, and she's been cut out entirely from the film.
Probably for length, right?
Length, and also like they said that the kind of, when he ended up in California, it's a weaker,
they basically took
less
out
dramatic.
him in California section of the movie.
Yeah. Which I wonder, I'd read an older draft of the script, and does this mean we never see him in California at all? I mean, there's a lot of stuff.
Or it's just reference.
Yeah, I mean, it's just tough to bookend that story then without her being in it. So we'll see. So Black Mass is the one I'm hoping to see very soon. And then Spectre, because I'm a big James Bond fan, and I love the brand new poster, the very very evokes classic Bond. He's got the white dinner jacket, and then the Day of the Dead kind of figure behind him that kind of
it's great.
calls back to even Live and Let Die kind of stuff. So. So those are my two can't wait to see him movies of the fall. What about you, Goldman?
I am looking forward to the two you mentioned, I should say. I never was like a huge Bond guy, but I've been loving these recent ones, Quantum of Solace aside. So I'm excited for Spectre. But my two, I'd say, I will say Mockingjay Part 2. Mm-hmm. I do love that series. I love the books and the films. And I know it's funny because Mockingjay Part 1, I agree, they shouldn't have split that book, right?
Yeah. It's the weirdest book to
It was
split.
the weirdest book to split. And it, by its nature, made the first movie, or part 1, I should say, of those movies, not have a lot going on. And so I understand that criticism, but I do think it's keep in mind it was coming off Catching Fire, a movie that everyone really loved.
Yeah.
And this is going to be, I think, the movie that people are be super excited for because this is the freaking war movie. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff, I think, in this film. So I'm excited to see them wrap up that story. The other one, though, I'd pick is The Martian.
Oh, yes.
Which, just the trailers.
I can
really
say
cool.
I've seen 49 minutes of the movie. I did a press event, interview Damon. It's all up on the site. It's awesome. At least the first 49 minutes are great. Hopefully it all holds together. So.
Yeah, so I'm super excited for that. I know Ridley Scott has been hit or miss for people in recent years. I mean, he's a legend. But his recent stuff, has been more polarizing. I actually liked Prometheus. I know, but
you're a huge Robin Hood fan, aren't you? No,
I'm not a huge Robin Hood. But no, him and Damon working together, everything about the ad campaign. I'm very excited.
Great
about
cast in it too, beyond Damon.
No, excellent cast.
How about you, Carl? Did you look over the release?
Come on. The Martian was the number one thing I was going to say. I just finished that novel a couple months ago. It was a great novel. It's going to be a great movie. I can already tell. Just from the trailer, they've nailed it. Just from the trailer, you're you got what this movie is about. It's going to be amazing.
Did you ever see Robinson Crusoe on Mars?
I haven't, no.
Adam West is in there too, and it's basically, it's The Martian. It's exactly what it sounds like. A guy gets marooned on Mars, an astronaut, and so it's I check that out.
My other big pick is Crimson Peak. I think that's going to be
Guillermo.
I can't wait, man. Gothic horror done by Guillermo. I think the cast is excellent.
I'm really excited for that movie, and it's funny because I'm both excited for that movie and I'm a little sad about that movie for the same reason, which is. Again, I'm like a Disney fanatic and a Disney parks fanatic, so I want him to do Haunted Mansion so much. And the fact that he's already doing a basically Haunted Mansion movie, I'm like, does this mean he won't feel he needs to do it anymore? Or is it like him saying to Disney, hey, see what I can do? Let's greenlight this sucker.
On that note, and this is going to open up a kind of less positive question about the fall, which movies do we think might not do that well? I'm a little worried about Crimson Peak because I feel like it's got some. I'm forgetting what the hell it's opening against, but it's opening against a much more kind of mainstream kind of picture. And the one movie I really am not getting any kind of pulse on is Pan.
Yeah. I think of the big ones, Pan is the one that I'm the most dubious about artistically, and also don't know if they're going to nail what they're. We're in this weird era of you've got. Disney specifically are doing all these live action versions of their animated stuff. Now, Pan is not a Disney movie, but obviously Peter Pan in the public's mind is very associated with the Disney thing. So I almost feel like they're hoping after Maleficent and Cinderella were big hits, Pan, not the same studio, but hopefully people go. But I watched the trailers. I'm like, unless it's always hard to tell with kids, right? You just don't know, and that's why they can't track kids movies very well. But right now I'm feeling dubious on that one.
I watched the trailer for Alice in Wonderland and thought nobody's gonna like this movie, and then it was
$1 billion.
So I don't have a sense of that one at all. But you know what I saw on the schedule, and please correct me and tell me that I don't know if this is coming out or not. Rings.
No, it's not. Actually, I found out the other day.
Because I was going to say that, since we've heard nothing, I was like, if that wasn't delayed, I'd be like, I'm very dubious on that particular movie.
I am curious how Paranormal will do because, it was that series. It was one of the, like Saw, it had so much momentum for a few years in a row. It was coming out every Halloween, making so much money. And then it started to dissipate. The fourth one wasn't as well received. Then they did the marked ones as kind of a weird pseudo spin-off that didn't open at the same time of year. So I'm curious if the marketing on this one, the fact they're like, this is the final one, it's in 3D, will that bring people back or not?
Yeah.
Well, we want to know what movies you can't wait to see this fall, and maybe which ones you think might not quite find their audience. Let us know in the comments below. That's going to do it for this week's podcast. I'd like to thank Eric Goldman for joining us this week. We'll have to have you on more.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, Chris Carl, as always. Find us on Twitter at Chris Carl, at the Eric Goldman, at Jim Vavida. And for all things movies, keep it here on IGN. Hey everybody, Jim and Eric here with an addendum to the podcast. Sorry Chris couldn't join us for this portion of it. But we did want to acknowledge the sad news this week of the passing of the iconic horror filmmaker Wes Craven. Eric, we're both fans of his, but you in particular are a huge fan.
Yeah, I mean, just a little personal thing here is that like Nightmare on Elm Street, one of my favorite movies ever. I had on my wall in my bedroom framed Elm Street 1 through 6 posters, plus additional Freddy posters on the wall. Watched the movie over and over, absolute favorite. And Scream, which I'm not exaggerating, I saw over 20 times in the theater.
Holy crap.
I worked at a movie theater, so I was seeing it for free.
Okay,
I would just stick around after my shift. But I was a lot obsessed. Yeah, I think I'm a big horror fan in general, but I think he was one of the absolute best. And yeah, just such a contribution to that genre and to the sort of cinematic landscape.
Yeah, I mean, he started, like from Last House on the Left to even the fact that outside of Superman and Batman, he's the only person who made a DC movie. He made Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
That wasn't a Superman or Batman movie. But also, I like the original Nightmare on Elm Street, but it's not my favorite one of them. However, and this is probably slightly controversial, I gotta say, I really dig Shocker. I think that's like almost in a weird way kind of a better Nightmare on Elm Street kind of sequel than some of the ones that they made, But I particularly like that one, and I like Scream as well. I'll admit it wasn't a series that I found myself revisiting a lot, but his contributions and his influence on so many people is just, unparalleled.
Yeah, It Follows, which is a great movie if you haven't seen it. One of my favorite movies this year. When you watch It Follows, for instance, a modern horror movie by like a up-and-coming director, there's a lot of clear influence. You can feel the spirit of both Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween, and Nightmare on Elm Street, and sort of this image of suburbia and sort of insidious thing happening in this place, like creeping in at the edges. That's the thing with Nightmare on Elm Street is, it's this very normal suburban thing, and there's this haze, even the way it looks, this sort of the dreamlike quality, even the scenes that aren't set in the dream, which I think is a really cool touch he added to that film.
Well, and it's also, too, it goes to show that they have tried to remake his movies, Hills Have Eyes and Nightmare, and the only one, correct me if I'm wrong, and I might be, was the only remake of his that he was actually involved in was Last House on the Left.
I think, and Hills Have Eyes.
And he was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Certainly not Elm Street, which he was bad-mouthing even about a year ago. Yeah.
Oh, Lord, yeah. Now, we've both actually had the opportunity to meet him. I met him for Last House on the Left remake. And, he was he was one of the producers on there, so he was obviously happy with the film. You got to meet him a couple of times, didn't you?
Yeah, I met him as a fan. I have the first time they did a box set of Nightmare on Elm Street, like big, thick one. The reason I will never sell it is because it's signed by him. He spoke at a screening of Elm Street, and I brought this big, bulky box set to have him sign. But then for this job, I got to interview him a couple times for Scream 4. I did the junket for Scream 4, so I had the 4-minute interview with him, but he was a very nice guy. And then I did actually a longer phoner with him when it was coming on DVD. And he had a well-earned reputation, has this really pleasant, soft-spoken guy. One of those, this happens a lot, the person who's making these horrific movies is just like, he seems like you're a really sweet dad or something, Just a nice guy.
Ultimately, and he also managed to blend kind of horror and comedy too, and the meta stuff, which is something people try to do. They try to do horror comedies and they can't seem to nail it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, what do you think his legacy will be?
Well, first and foremost, of course, you have to say Elm Street and Freddy. It's kind of funny because a couple weeks ago, there was, new reports percolating about another Elm Street reboot.
Yeah.
And I had a big conversation, argument with my friend April, who's another huge Elm Street fan. She actually went to me to that screening, and she's so angry that they're ever trying to do a reboot of Elm Street. I'm more accepting, even though I'm like, I hope it's good. It probably won't be. I hope it's good. But I said, at the end of the day, it speaks to the fact that Freddy Krueger is on par with Dracula now. I mean, Wes Craven, who wrote that movie too, created a character that everyone, even if they've never seen the movie, knows. That's what's so powerful, I think. So his legacy, into everyone, I think, is the fact that Freddy is just part of our pop culture fabric and just mythology. But then with these films, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned the meta thing. I do want to say super underrated is New Nightmare, the Seventh Elm Street movie. I think it was actually ahead of its time, and it was at a time when people were really soured on that series, and it opened the same day as Pulp Fiction. But super meta in really interesting, crazy way, and I was fascinated by New Nightmare when it came out. And then 2 years later, he did Scream, added the comedy element, and he had one of his biggest hits ever. So.
And now it's coming back as a TV series.
Now there's a TV version, which isn't that good. But
but Ghostface is also, he's nowhere near as popular as a Freddy, but he has got an iconic image.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he could do it again. I mean, Shocker was a blatant attempt, which he openly admitted because it was at the time when he wasn't.
Still dig Shocker.
He wasn't making any money. They worked it out later, but at the time he wasn't making money from New Line from Elm Street, and that was him going to Universal and like, let's try to do another Freddy. It didn't work out. I like Shocker too.
Well, I mean, oddly enough, New Line Cinema might be actually part of his legacy too. I mean, he helped put them on the map, and they're still around.
No, that's a great point. New Line, nicknamed the house that Freddy built in Hollywood, went on to release the Ninja Turtles films 7, The Mask.
They worked on the Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings, they're now kind of a part of Warner Brothers, but absolutely. Like without Elm Street, who knows if that studio would have even survived?
Right. Yeah. Guys, we want to know what you thought of the films of Wes Craven, and let us know in the comments below your favorites and just your overall thoughts on the life and career of Wes Craven. Thank you, and for all things movies, keep it here on IGN.